The reason the world does not know us, St. John tells us in the second reading, is that it did not know him. Who was the one the world did not know? He is the one who says, I am the good shepherd. The one who says, I am the truth. The one who says, I know mine and mine know me. But the world did not know him. And if we want to look for a figure who can stand for the world, we have no one better than Pontius Pilate. You'll recall, as Jesus stood before him, Jesus the judge, to be judged by the power of the world, Pilate said to him, what is truth? What is truth? And then Pilate went on to ask, do you not know that I have the power to release you and the power to crucify you? Pilate and the world that does not know Jesus chooses power over truth. But the psalmist reminds us today that it is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in princes, to trust in power. We hear the apostles speak to the power of Jerusalem in the first reading today when they were asked to justify their preaching of the risen Christ. They said, we cannot but speak of what we have seen and heard. Another way to translate that is to say, we cannot not speak of what we have seen and heard. And what did they see and hear? They heard, I have power to lay my life down and power to take it up again. They heard this, as we just did in the gospel from Jesus, but they saw it. He asked them to touch his side after he had come back from the cross and the tomb, risen in glory, evidently powerful over death. The conclusion that the apostles draw from their experience is this: there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. No other name. A phrase that rings with particular relevance in the aftermath of some significant events here in the United States in the last month or so. Contrast this phrase of the apostles with what happened at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., a nominally Catholic university. The president was asked to speak at Georgetown, and the White House requested the Georgetown officials that they cover over the monogram in the auditorium where he was to speak, the monogram that has been there for years and years, and which has the first three letters in Greek of the name of Jesus, IHS, a very famous monogram, the name of Jesus. And the university, the Catholic university, covered over the name of Jesus at the request of the White House. Commentators have wondered whether, should such a request have been made had the president been speaking in a mosque, whether Muslim officials would have covered over the beautiful Arabic writing of the Koran, which decorates the mosque. Very likely such a request would never have been made, and very certainly it would never have been complied with had it been made. But it was made at Georgetown, and it was complied with. This name that is above every other name, as St. Paul tells us. Coupled with this is the ongoing controversy at Notre Dame University about the invitation to the president to speak. Not only that, but the decision to award him an honorary doctorate of law. Now, in both the cases of Georgetown and Notre Dame, there was no expectation that they would invite the president to speak, and therefore, if they hadn't invited him, it would not have been taken as a sign of disrespect for his office. And there is no intention to disrespect the office. But the decision to invite him to receive an honorary degree in a Catholic university makes one wonder whether they misread or misheard the apostles. It's as if what we're hearing is, we cannot speak of what we have seen and heard. We must be silent in the face of power, because the decision of Notre Dame to honor the most powerful proponent in the United States of unrestricted abortion with the doctorate of law, one of the most powerful supporters of same-sex marriage, is to strike right at the heart of the Christian gospel. Perhaps the officials at Notre Dame feared Pilate's reproach. What is truth? What is truth? You have your truth, I have my truth, she has her truth, he has his truth. Who is to decide what is truth? Don't tell me what is truth. And there we have the great fear that we all face, that we be labeled intolerant. Because the great reigning virtue of our time is to be tolerant of everything and everyone, never to try to suggest that one position is true and another not. And yet, we notice that when disagreements ensue on policy and law, as they inevitably must, especially on fundamental matters, this tolerance comes to a conclusion because the government, the state, decides between the options, just as the Supreme Court decided in the Roe versus Wade decision to do violence to the Constitution of the United States and what one justice referred to as raw judicial power. Power decides. For Pilate and the world that knows not Jesus, truth always yields to power. I have other sheep, Jesus says in the gospel today, other sheep that do not belong to this fold. These also I must lead, and they will hear my voice. But how will they hear his voice if his followers will not speak for him, especially in the public realm? If they remain silent, if they cover over his name? This is the year of the anniversary of St. Paul the Apostle, who says to us, "Be not ashamed of the gospel. Be not ashamed of the gospel. It is the power of God." Should we be ashamed of ourselves? Yes, indeed. Think of St. Peter. He denied Jesus 3 times. He was profoundly and bitterly ashamed of himself and his own behavior. Think of St. Paul. I persecuted this way. He said, I'm the greatest sinner of all. He was profoundly ashamed of himself, and so when we are wrong, we should be too. Should we be ashamed of things done in the name of the gospel? Yes, indeed. The persecution or the imposition of the gospel on the Indian peoples, the persecution of the Jews, the various sins committed by Christians through the ages, yes, we should be ashamed of them because they sin against the truth, and we are the servants of the truth, Jesus Christ, who also said, I am the way further into the truth and freedom.